नेक्स्ट वीक डोलो शर्मा को फिल्म नहीं लाइक दिया
Let us pray. O God, we come together in your name in this Parliament to debate our nation's affairs and pass laws for the betterment and welfare of all Fijians. Guide us in our deliberations and grant us the wisdom to do what is just and fair. We ask you to bless our beloved nation and grant every Fijian peace, prosperity, and equal opportunity. Help us to serve our citizens with honesty, integrity, and without fear or favor, to keep the trust of those who have sent us here. We seek your divine guidance to continue to build a better nation for all Fijians. In your name, Amen. Honourable members, please be seated. Secretary General.
Confirmation of minutes.
I now call on the Leader of Government in Parliament, the Honourable Inia Serui-Ratu, to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I move that the minutes of the sitting of Parliament held on Tuesday, 28th July 2020, as previously circulated, be taken as read and be confirmed.
Is there a seconder?
Honourable Speaker, I beg to second the motion.
Parliament will now vote on the motion. The question is that the minutes of the sitting of Parliament held on Tuesday, 28 July 2020, as previously circulated, be taken as read and be confirmed. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Communications from the Chair.
I welcome all honourable members to today's sitting of Parliament. I also welcome all those watching the live broadcast and the live streaming of today's proceedings. I thank everyone for taking an interest in the workings of your Parliament. Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
Honourable members, I now call upon the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, the Honourable Ayaz Syed Qayyum, to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 51, I move that A, the Telecommunications Amendment Budget Amendment Bill, 2020, be considered by Parliament without delay. B, the bill must pass through one stage at a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills for the 2020-21 budget table on 17 July 2020, and that the time for the debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during this sitting of Parliament. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
I now call upon the Honourable Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak to his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I'll be very brief. This bill essentially relates to the number of policy announcements that were made during the budget address on the 17th of July. And we look forward to debating this amendment come the right time to do so. Thank you.
Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on the motion. Honourable members, as no other member wishes to speak, I now call on the Honourable Attorney General and the Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak in reply. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I have no further comments. Thank you, sir.
Honourable members, the Parliament will now vote. The question is, pursuant to Standing Orders 51, that A, the Telecommunications Budget Amendment Bill number 2020 be considered by Parliament without delay. B, the bill must pass through one stage at a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills for the 2020-2021 budget, tabled on 17 July 2020. And E, that the time for the debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during this sitting of Parliament. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
Honourable members, I now call upon the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, the Honourable Ayaz Syed Qayyum, to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 51, I move that A, the Fiji National Provident Fund Budget Amendment Bill 2020 be considered by Parliament without delay. That the bill must pass through one stage at a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills in the 2020-2021 budget table on 17 July 2020, and that the time for the debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during the sitting of Parliament. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
I now call upon the Honourable Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak to his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, this amendment is part of the budget announcement that were made in respect of the continuation of the 5% contribution by employers and employees till 31 December next year. And Mr. Speaker, sir, also the amendment seeks to bring in a new product for pensioners to give them a lot more flexibility, in particular those who have retired. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable members, the floor is now open for debate on the motion. Honourable members, as no other member wishes to speak, I now call on the Honourable Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak in reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have no further comments to make. Thank you.
Honourable members, the Parliament will now vote. The question is, pursuant to Standing Orders 51, that A, the Fiji National Provident Fund Budget Amendment Bill 2020 be considered by Parliament without delay. B, the bill must pass through one stage at a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills for the 2020-2021 budget tabled on 17 July 2020. And E, that the time for the debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during this sitting of Parliament. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Consideration of bills.
I now call upon the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, the Honorable Ayaz Syed Qayyum, to move his motion. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 51, I move that A, the Business Licensing Repeal Bill 2020 be considered by Parliament without delay. B, the bill must pass through one stage of a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills for the 2020-21 budget, tabled on 7 July 2020. And E, that the time for the debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during this sitting of Parliament. Thank you, sir.
Is there a seconder?
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to second the motion.
I now call upon the Honorable Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, again, this particular bill goes directly to the budget announcement itself, which is the doing away of business licenses altogether. And this is the consequential legislative amendment, which in fact is not an amendment, it's actually a repealing of the Business Licensing Act. And indeed, the consequential amendments to all the subsequent laws that has a reference to the Business Licensing Act itself, which is actually set out in the schedule in Section 4. Mr. Speaker, so this is all part of the budget. Thank you.
Honorable members, the floor is now open for debate on the motion. As no other member wishes to speak, I now call on the Honorable Attorney General and the Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications to speak in reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I have no further comments. Thank you.
Honorable members, the Parliament will now vote. The question is, pursuant to Standing Orders 51, that A, the Business Licensing Repeal Bill 2020 be considered by Parliament without delay. B, the bill must pass through one stage at a single sitting of Parliament. C, the bill must not be referred to a standing committee or other committee of Parliament. D, the bill must be debated and voted upon by Parliament immediately after the vote on the consequential bills for the 2020-2021 budget tabled on 17 July 2020. And E, that the time for debate for the bill be limited to ensure the bill is debated and voted upon during this sitting of Parliament. Does any member oppose the motion? As no member opposes, the motion is agreed to unanimously. Secretary General.
Resumption of debate on the second reading of the 2020-2021 Appropriation Bill 2020, Bill number 13 of 2020.
Honourable members, pursuant to the resolution of Parliament passed on Monday, 27 July 2020, the Honorable Attorney General will be exempted from the speaking time limitations. I now call upon the Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Civil Service and Communications, the Honorable Ayaz Syed Qayyum, to give his right of reply. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I intend to be not too long. Mr. Speaker, sir, I would like to first of all, beginning by thanking all the many ordinary Fijians who actually contributed to the formulation of this budget. Our business leaders, the many individual Fijians who actually sent in their submissions, people on the street, people through Facebook, our dedicated technocrats and bureaucrats, our doctors, nurses, who also gave their input in respect of the way forward regarding the health systems. Our Honourable Prime Minister, his agreement to put in place a visionary leadership, a visionary budget through that visionary leadership, our cabinet colleagues, and everybody else that have contributed in a very positive manner to the formulation of this particular budget, Mr. Speaker, sir. I want to also reiterate, because these are extraordinary times, this has been highlighted, which obviously seems to be lost on the opposition, the enormous effort by our people at the front line, the health workers, the doctors, the nurses, the RFMF personnel, the police, who are now also part and parcel of this new measures we put in place to try and reignite the economy through the Bula bubble, the blue lanes in particular, which is already working now, Mr. Speaker, sir. I'd like to acknowledge their contribution in their assistance and continued assistance. Mr. Speaker, sir, of course, I'd like to also thank those people who have helped in the maintenance of the curfew, the downloading of the Care Fiji app, which I intend to get back to, Mr. Speaker, sir. Because these are actually extraordinary times. The world throughout, every single country in the world has been affected by COVID-19. Every single country in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, has had an economic downturn. Every single country in the world, Mr. Speaker, sir, has had people losing jobs, have had people being sick at the very least, and some people indeed dying. So these are enormous and challenging times, enormously challenging times, Mr. Speaker, sir. So it required, Mr. Speaker, sir, a political mindset that took a very long-term view, a long-term goal being put in place, and indeed a position that required a national effort. And in fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, after the budget was delivered, I was quite, in a way, buoyed by the comment by Honourable Sitiveni Rambuka, the Leader of Opposition, where he said, and I quote, "We have to be positive when we talk about the measures that have been announced today," meaning the 17th of July budget announcement. "It's a courageous budget, and it's up to us to critique it properly, and hopefully the nation can get behind it and go achieve the goals they believe they can achieve to get the economy back." I was quite buoyed by that, because I thought here we have a new mindset, a new political approach to a once-in-a-100-year lifetime situation, and we will now get on with the business of actually moving the country forward. And indeed, what they always say, in a bipartisan manner. Of course, Mr. Speaker, sir, it changed. It completely changed. And I don't know whether it had to do with the machinations within the party or whatever it was. But from what I've heard, unfortunately I was ill in the past couple of days, I still am to an extent, but from whatever little I saw on television and from what was reported in the media, from what our colleagues told us, the Prime Minister passed on messages, it would appear the past 2 days became simply moments of ridicule for them, moments to lie, moments to try and undermine, moments to not try and recognize the hard work that's been put in, the philosophical outlook of the way forward. They simply became political point-scoring moments. But Mr. Speaker, sir, I was sort of sitting there and thinking, what is the impact of this? What kind of deleterious effect it is having on the mindset of our people. What kind of rationalization do they have in their minds? You have newspapers, Honorable Prasad's paper, going around having headlines, without even a single reference or question to us whether what he was claiming was correct or not. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the situation we are in. So what type of, mindset are we trying to inculcate in the public? It is so superficial, it is so shallow, in fact it is so deceitful, quoting from the Bible, 666, bringing props like tin fish, all of these sorts of things, Mr. Speaker, sir. It is, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I call, it is filled with misplaced contempt. It is filled, I have all the time, keep on talking. It is filled with misplaced contempt for what is actually good and what is genuine. That's what it is, Mr. Speaker, sir. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it completely ignores what is happening throughout the world. I remember once, Mr. Speaker, sir, in Parliament when we were debating, Honorable Prasad on this floor had said, in politics, everything is fair. And I remember, at that point in time, you can check the Hansard, saying, not everything is fair. As they say, that, in love and war, everything is fair. I believe not so. You must have principles. You must have values. There are certain boundaries. There are certain lines you do not cross. You must, Mr. Speaker, sir, not come to this Parliament. You must come to this Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, and feign. Don't feign empathy for the poor. Don't feign your patriotism, intellectual input, credibility by producing some email that if he did not read the full content of, they've already put it on their Facebook page. He did not actually put up all the other emails. Did they read the full content? And this is a professor professing these kind of things. Mr. Speaker, sir, in one breath, Mr. Speaker, sir, Honorable Sitiveni Rambuka criticizes the RBF, but in the next sentence, very hurriedly uses their figures to actually back up his own argument. What kind of contradiction is this? It's a paradoxical approach, intellectually dishonest. This is the level of debate that we actually had in Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, it kind of, and also is listening to all the newspaper. If you can please stop having a private conversation. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at the way that the Fiji Times has been going on about this without any reference to us or getting answers from us, it reminds me, those of you who know Bollywood, it reminds me of a 1980s movie. There used to be a character called Kader Khan. He was actually a comedian, but he was also an atrocious guy, the very negative roles he played. And there was one particular movie in which he was the opposition leader. And obviously he was opposed to the Prime Minister, the Chief Minister of that state. That particular state, Mr. Speaker, sir, actually had a huge flood. People were dying, the bridges had washed away, etc. So the opposition leader calls his favorite newspaper reporter in and says, look, if the Prime Minister goes to the flood-prone areas by helicopter, your headline should be, people are suffering, yet Prime Minister takes helicopter. If he does not take the helicopter, but takes the car or the train, then you must say, people are waiting, and yet he chose to go, people are waiting, people are waiting, yet he chose, You see, you're getting exasperated. Control yourself. Check your heart rate. Check your heart rate. I'll say the story again. You are not the speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I would please request if they stop telling me to sit down. The standing orders have been put in place. Mr. Speaker, sir, I will repeat the story. The opposition leader said, if the Prime Minister travels to the flood-prone area by helicopter, your headline must be, Prime Minister travels by helicopter and people are suffering on the ground. Expensive ride. If he chooses not to go by helicopter but goes by car, then you write, people are suffering and waiting for him, why didn't he take the helicopter? Precisely what Honorable Prasad and Fiji Times have conspired to do. Precisely what they have done, Mr. Speaker, sir. Precisely what he has done. And Mr. Speaker, sir, and you know how the perchance we have for Bollywood, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, I wanted to say this before I get on to the nuts and bolts of the budget debate itself, Mr. Speaker, sir. The Honourable Leader of Opposition talked a lot about, why didn't we take views of Mick Beddoes, Savinatha Narumbe. One of the things that I had to take my head off to Savinatha Narumbe for, he actually prepared an alternative budget. What have you guys done? What have you done? You had the opportunity, you have more people, you have more resources, you did not do an alternative budget because you are scared. You are scared, you don't know what to say. You don't know what to cut, what to increase. At least he had the gumption to do it. Obviously he revealed his own frailties by doing an alternative budget. But the fact of the matter is, you have never done one. You have never done a budget, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Order. Never done one. Mr. Speaker, sir, the point of the matter is that there is intellectual dishonesty. Mick Beddoes suggested, let me give you a few examples. Mick Beddoes suggested, Honorable Rambuka, I don't know whoever wrote the speech, whether they told you about this or not, but Mick Beddoes suggested that civil servants should only work 3 days a week. And therefore, they should be paid only 3 days a week. So what's going to happen to the nurses, the doctors, etc.? Mr. Speaker, sir, and therefore it would have cut civil service pay by 40%. I want all the civil servants to listen to this. Mr. Speaker, sir, Savinatha Narumbe said, he said we should increase VAT to 12%. We should impose an additional 20% company tax surcharge, increase personal income tax, increase duty on motor vehicles and cut civil service salaries. And yet they're holding their submissions up as some kind of alternative to this budget? Some kind of alternative to this budget? Mr. Speaker, sir, no country is raising taxes. No country. When you don't have the ability to pay tax, why raise tax? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to undermine confidence? When people are losing jobs, you want to cut, or you want to increase salaries? Increase taxes, sorry, when companies are now losing business, you want to increase their corporate tax, and this is the alternative? These are questions, Mr. Speaker, sir, that need to be asked. We have not cut civil service salaries. We are the largest employer in Fiji. If we cut civil service salaries, we'd be taking out, sucking out, even if you did 10%, at least $120 to $130 million from the economy. They won't be able to spend that money, therefore you won't have consumption. When you don't have consumption, you don't pay VAT. They look after other people. Yes, we have made some adjustments in terms of overtime. They understand that. And in fact, those people of you who are driven so much by social media, if you look at the social media, people watching the budget address, the moment we announce there won't be any civil service pay cuts, literally, people all dropped off because the civil service are waiting to see if there will be a pay cut or not. They thought there would be one, but there wasn't one. And since then, we received many congratulations of people saying, thank you. But Mr. Speaker, it's a bigger picture. Just because the economy is slowed down in the private sector does not mean civil servants don't have to deliver services. The nurses have to work, the doctors have to work, the medical assistants have to work, the police, the military, they have to work. They have to provide services. With these new announcements, the cuts that we have made, they need to become less bureaucratic, become more efficient. So we need them. And we are paying them. They'll be the one, the key stakeholders, to drive the impetus we've given to the private sector. And this is the opposition coming here and saying we should have listened to people who should pay the civil service pay cut. Honorable Prasad, again, offered this issue. He wrote article on his webpage in the Fiji Times, yet he denied it. Yet you denied it. You know, You know, Mr. Speaker, sir, I know the truth. That's what I'm saying it. Unfortunately, you don't. You don't know the truth, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the point with Honorable Prasad is this, and I'll get to your obsequiousness. The point of him is this, that he is so busy, first of all, trying to be so obsequious to the opposition, that means smarmy, if you know the meaning of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, so eager to roll over and please, so eager. Mr. Speaker, sir, I was this morning, you know, around about 3 a.m. I was trying to actually put together my notes and say, what am I going to say? And I realized all the contradictions that kept on coming from the opposition. It kind of reminded me, you know, I have a young son who's actually into rapping, and I used to do a lot of poems before, and I came up with a poem for you, Honorable Prasad, and it goes like this. He will obfuscate, he will procrastinate, with no values or principles. Truth he will swindle, lest his ego dwindle. That's for you. That's for you, Honorable Prasad, because your ego gets in the way. And I find it quite actually an affront. I find it an affront that even the two members behind him from his party, they claim there's a legendary party, Honorable Tikon Duandua, who I've been extremely restrained with. Extremely restrained with, because I treated him as a friend. I still thought of him as a friend. Obviously, he does not with me. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. He produced an email that I had sent the Honorable Prime Minister, and I have got other emails to that. He did not have the courtesy, nor will I understand Honorable John Yusamate talked about it, did not have the courtesy of reading the rest of the email. I know they put it on their webpage. There is no conspiracy. In fact, there's an email that says that if you use those base figures, we would have shown a growth in 2008 when the whole world knew that we did not grow in 2008. Honorable Prasad, understand that. In 2008, if we had used those figures, we would not have grown. This is the level of honesty that is there. They're now trying to, Mr. Speaker, sir, obfuscate issue. The reason why you're yelling is because you've been caught out. You're an intellectually dishonest politician. Intellectually dishonest politician. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I have read the whole thing. You have not read it. Mr. Speaker, sir. You know, the point of the matter is this, that we have a opposition, since the pronouncement of the budget, I think who went into a big spin because of the enormous changes that were actually put out. And they did not know how to handle it. This is why the quality and the level of contribution has been so abysmal over the past few days. Honorable Prasad has tried to spin the numbers. Honorable Rambuka has tried to again spin the numbers, pick and choose as he likes, tried to undermine institutions. And here we are, we have international monetary agencies believing in our economic growth, believing in our economic strength and economic management of our finances, and are willing to give us loans, as we highlighted, at concessionary rates, at 0%, at 1.5%. Mr. Speaker, sir, you see, this is the problem with him. Mr. Speaker, sir, if they did not have if they did not believe he had capacity, they would not have done so. He just stands and yells things. That's the problem. He doesn't want to actually dig up the truth. With that, we have in fact more money being lent to us, but we have said no. Of course, the fact of the matter is your debt to GDP ratio will go up because your GDP has come down. Anybody knows that. If your tourism numbers goes down, your GDP output will go down. Obviously, therefore, your debt to GDP ratio will go up. If your tourism numbers fall, you don't have revenue. Therefore, you don't have much operating revenue to work from. This is like teaching basic economics. And we have to stand here, we have to stand here and teach these people. You see, you know, this is the problem, Mr. Speaker, and I've said this in Parliament before. This is, when Honorable Prasad actually tends to interject so much, you know he's caught out. And as I've said previously, the more he yells, the more soft ground he is on. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. we have said we need to make a mind shift change. We have said the entire philosophy of this budget is that we need to prepare ourselves when the borders open. We cannot react to situations. We need to be proactive. We need to be proactive. We can't be caught with our pants down. Honorable Prasad, we can't be caught with our pants down. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look, Mr. Speaker, sir, if you look at all the measures that have been announced in respect of, firstly, unemployment benefits of $100 million, in respect of the increase for social welfare, in respect of the police, the law and order situation, in respect of the increase for agriculture, in respect of the capacity building within the Ministry of Health, all of these are not simply just reacting, but pre-positioning ourselves. Number one. Number two, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have now put in place we've been given the opportunity, I should say, to be able to start off with a clean slate. So we have looked at the entire tariff system, 1,600 line items. Again, they're saying it's white goods. Again, Mr. Speaker, sir, that's an obfuscation. I've got a list of all the things here that we've zero rated or reduced. They're saying it's only for white goods. Fruits, vegetables, pasta, potatoes, dried condiments, soup broth, salmon, sardines, washing detergent, toothbrush, blankets, linen, exercise books, liquid soap, combs, baby walkers, lens and specs have been zero rated completely, Mr. Speaker, sir. Life jackets, Mr. Speaker, sir. And in fact, if you look at the revised, we have been working, as we announced, we've been working with all our counterparts, including the private sector. Things like undergarments, panties, hose, men's vests, children's vests, zero rated, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of these things we've been working on in the past few days. Is he telling me, are you telling me, you don't need underpants? You don't need the other goods? You don't need washing detergent? You don't need toothpaste? You don't need toothbrush? This is the kind of obfuscation that is taking place. He's sitting there gleefully, gleaming to himself. This is the shameful act, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I take exception to that. And I take exception to that. In the same way, on the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the same way, the global bonds, everybody knows the global bonds mature this year. He knows that too. Mr. Speaker, sir, the funds are already secured. We've inherited debts from SDL, from SVT, the NBF. He knows that, you see, because he's been obsequious. You've been obsequious because you need to be obsequious to him. That's his problem. That's your problem, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have the global bond repayment this year. That's what he knows. Jugging up figures, saying $100 million. As I said to the Fiji Chamber of Commerce gathering on Saturday, here we are, Mr. Speaker, sir, going out to the outside world, trying to put our best foot forward. They are recognizing what we are saying, and they recognize what we have done. Yet, these people, for political gain, want to portray Fiji in a bad light. That's what they want to do. They want our ratings to come down. They want our ratings to go. See, look at him, what he said. Not just Fiji, just you. What an idiotic thing to say. You see, this, and thank you very much for that, actually. Thank you very much. That, Mr. Speaker, sir, encapsulates the entire thinking of this opposition, including you. Entire thinking of this opposition. It's personalized. Everything is personalized, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Order.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have many, many countries, Mr. Speaker, sir, that have taken these measures. And we are in a very good position to be able to take these measures. We have been told the ease of doing business in Fiji is pretty bad. We have all this bureaucracy. We've now removed the business licenses. Stamp duties are gone. I don't know how many of them actually spoke about that. How many of them actually mentioned that? How many of them actually mentioned the fact that now tariff rates are basically flat 5% across? It will reduce corruption. It will reduce efficiency. How many of them talked about now, rather than trying to monitor that, we can now look at the standard of goods coming in? They did not talk about that. How many of them talked about the fact that ordinary Fijians can now get $30,000 housing grant? We've had so many queries. Honorable Premila Kumar will also tell you that, Minister for Housing. They did not mention that at all. They did not mention about the fact that how we're trying to pre-position private sector investment so it can create jobs. They did not mention any of that. And they have the gall, the audacity to come and say here that they're trying to do this for Fiji. They're trying to tell us facts. What a lot of baloney. What a lot of baloney, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is this. We have a number of measures that we put in place. We have a number of pre-positioning policies that have been put in place. We have also, Mr. Speaker, sir, tried to engender within the economy, Mr. Speaker, sir, a taxation regime that has reduced significantly many of the taxes. So we looked at, for example, ECAL. Nobody looked at the rationale for that. We've reduced it from 10% to 5%. We still need ECAL. We have over 40 villages to relocate to higher ground. We need the funding for that. We need renewable energy. We need to have roads that need to be addressed because they've been washed away by encroaching waters, inundation of waters, because of rising sea levels. We'll remove STT, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of these benefits have been put in place because they are long-term strategic thinking, Mr. Speaker, sir. We've slashed departure tax by $100. We have, Mr. Speaker, sir, said we're allocating $60 million to Fiji Airways so they can come up with packages. I just spoke to Fiji Airways last night. Already over 140 hotels and properties have decided to work with Fiji Airways to come up with this package. When we are told that when we tell that we need to have inclusive rates included, they're saying, oh, you don't have the right attitude. There are newspapers, they all talk about it. But Mr. Speaker, sir, we need to change the ball game. People know that. I understand somebody said, oh, we've only given money to tourism. Mr. Speaker said, no. But the person, I think Honorable Bulitavu may have said that, I'm not sure. Does he know how many people along the Coral Coast, in the Mamanudas, the Yasawas, Vanuatu, are directly engaged and work in the tourism sector? How many people who go and perform meke, people who sing in the bands, that they're engaged in the tourism sector? Did they talk about the 150% rebate that we said? Anybody who hires a meke group, a band, etc., you hire them, you get 150% tax deduction? They did not mention that. They did not mention that. We are talking about real people. These are real people. Mr. Speaker, sir, yet they failed to mention that. Yet they failed to highlight that. Yet they're trying to obscure and say only giving money to tourism. Tourism contributes 40% towards our GDP. Mr. Speaker, sir. So the fact of the matter is, Mr. Speaker, sir, we have half-baked approaches from the opposition in respect of this. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to very quickly once again highlight the increases that we have in the budget. We have budget increase from $347.5 million to $394 million, increase of $46 million for health. We are hiring additional 223 intern nurses who will become full-time nurses, 40 midwives, promoting 105 medical interns to full-time medical officers, CWM Maternity Hospital, Lambasa upgrade, $3 million, the hospital. Increase $4 million for purchase of biomedical equipment, $25 million COVID-19 contingency fund. The police, increase of budget, Mr. Speaker, sir, to $200 million, up by $37.3 million. Phase 2 reform and restructure completion includes the regularization of special constables, recruitment of 30 civilians, filling of 394 vacant positions, including 257 promotions, 137 new recruits, completion of the police stations in Nakasi, Nandi, Lautoka, and Nalawa police stations, education, free education. I think somebody from the other side tried to obscure the, give wrong figures. Free education still continues. Yet they say we're not doing anything for the poor. We have now electricity bills being paid up to 31st of March of next year for those who earn less than $30,000. Extension of water disconnection policy in place. 31st of March this year, next year. And they say we don't do anything for the poor people. We don't do anything for the ordinary people. The suspension of TELS loans. So those people who are on TELS loans, they don't have to do the repayments if they continue to work. Mr. Speaker, sir, social welfare, an increase of $14.4 million. We have got DFAT now working with our social welfare to put in place an IT system to make sure that our social welfare recipients are paid on time, that we've got proper data, etc. Construction of the Barefoot College, Mr. Speaker, sir. Unemployment benefit, as I highlighted, $100 million, of which $5 million, Mr. Speaker, sir, is going towards reskilling, retraining people. Many people will change their jobs. All of these things are there for the ordinary Fijians. Mr. Speaker, sir, communications. Again, online business and construction licensing, they'll take place. Should be completed in the next 9 months or so. All of this is pre-positioning Fiji, Mr. Speaker, sir. All of this is pre-positioning our economy. All of this also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, sir, is all looking after ordinary Fijians. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is, you know, last Thursday, we had, on Wednesday, I had rung up the Secretary General of Parliament saying that we'd like to offer a budget session to the opposition. And we got a message the next day saying that 5 of them will turn up. And we had set 1 o'clock. We'll wait until 20 to 2, or 10 to 2 actually. And then we were told, initially we were told they're coming, they're on their way, and by 10 to 2 they were told that they're not coming anymore. Mr. Speaker, sir, I mean, look, that's a prerogative. Honourable Lenora Gerengeri-Tumbu, who I understand is now the timekeeper of everybody, you should make a note of that, who turned up late and who didn't. Mr. Speaker, sir, but what really actually caught my attention was the civil servants who were there, they actually could not believe it. They were all geared up. These people had been awake for many nights. They were there to talk about the budget. They had people from FRCS, we had people from Ministry of Economy waiting. There's about 15 of them. And when I told them the opposition is coming, they waited for 40 minutes or 50 minutes. And the opposition is not coming. And they had this look of, you know, disgust on their face. That here they are working hard and these people decide not to turn up. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the kind of message, that they're sending. In the same way, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the same way, you know, just to show the caliber of reporting I wanted to highlight of Fiji Times, I got a set of questions yesterday, not about budget issues, but saying, Honourable Gerengeri-Tumbu has said that you came late for budget, can you comment on that? This is the level of questions that we get sent by the good old Fiji Times, Mr. Speaker, sir. Last point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, sir, all of these things we are doing is trying to pre-position Fiji. The Honourable Prime Minister launched the Care Fiji app a few weeks back. The Care Fiji app, Mr. Speaker, sir, was given to us by Singapore. It's the same source code that Australia uses. About a week and a half ago, in the 7:30 report, the Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison, in a very proud manner, stated that 40% of Australians have that app on their phones. And the reason why he said that in a proud manner was because it's one of the highest rates of uploads of that app. But it goes to show that the contact tracing abilities through digital means is one of the better ways of doing contact tracing. I bet you none of the opposition actually have the contact tracing app on, Care Fiji app on. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. The reason, let me reiterate this, and you have their favorite law firm, one of their lawyers, writing an opinion piece in the Fiji Times saying, oh, because there's no privacy laws in Fiji, etc., we should not have the Care Fiji Act. You give more information to Google, WhatsApp, Viber, and every other single app than you'll ever give with this particular app. All it simply does, Mr. Speaker, sir, this is a concerted political effort to undermine an effort to get people to come to Fiji. When an Australian or a Kiwi, let me just explain. When an Australian, you don't know what you're talking about, please keep quiet. When an Australian or a Kiwi looks at the Bulla bubble,
It is true. Order.
when an Australian
Order.
When an Australian or a Kiwi or any other traveller now in the world, when they actually look at whether to travel to a country or not, they look at your health capacity now. If we get a vaccine, of course, that's a different story. They look at whether everybody in Fiji is vaccinated or not. They look at your health capacity. One of the critical issues in the COVID-19 pandemic is your ability to contact trace. Is your ability to contact trace. So if, for example, you were in a room full of people for more than 15 minutes, 2 days later, assuming, I get COVID-19, they will ask me, who were you in the room with for the past few days? So we can immediately get in touch with them, so we can tell them, please come in, we can check you for your symptoms. That's how you stop community spread. Nobody in the human capacity can remember every single person they met. All the contact tracing does is that the phone is here. My Bluetooth at the moment is bouncing off the PM's Bluetooth. All it does is records his number. That's all. It does not say where we met. It does not say we were holding hands or not. It does not say we were in the hotel room under a mango tree or wherever. All it does. You see, this is the kind of cynicism saying, you sure? This is the kind of cynicism when Google, when Apple Store have all approved this, yet they're saying that. For me, this is a direct affront to the people of Fiji. It's a direct affront to the tourism workers in Fiji. Here we are trying to hard, so then people have confidence. They say, yes, okay, Fiji's got contact tracing app. If I do go there, if there is a community outbreak, they can get in touch with me really quickly. People watch your numbers. At the moment, our upload is only about 50,000. It's very low. We need it to increase. If we go out into the market, if you want to fill up the hotels in Taveuni, if you want to fill up the hotels in Savu Savu, people will say, has Fiji got a contact tracing app or not? University studies have proven. University studies have proven digital contact tracing is the best way to do it. And once you get the number, it rolls off. Every 28 days it falls off. It's only for the past 28 days. And Mr. Speaker, sir, it's only for the past 28 days. If, assuming that I get COVID-19, if I get COVID-19, then they will send me a PIN number. I have to agree to give my numbers. It'll go simply to the Ministry of Health dashboard. There's a group of people there. All they'll get is the numbers. No name. Where you met them, where you're holding their hands or kissing them, they won't know. They'll simply tell you what the number was. They'll call that number and say, excuse me, you have been in contact with somebody who's just had COVID-19. Can you please come in and get yourself checked out? When an Australian tourist or New Zealand tourist is looking at that, they'll say this place is a safe place to go. That's all there is to it. Yet, they are undermining it. They and their supporters are undermining it. Those savvy people, supposedly savvy on social media. Mr. Speaker, sir, this is the level of contribution by the opposition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to make a few just very broad-based statements. The fact of the matter is, I just would have wished, and I wish, Honourable Rambuka, you had actually stuck to your words, your first reaction. Even your new Vice President rang me up the next day, on the 18th of July, maybe this is before he became VP, it was before he became VP, from Ra. He said, very good budget. Very good budget. Please don't remove him. But he said very good budget. Mr. Speaker, sir, if Honourable Rambuka actually had stuck to his words, would have been having a completely different approach. The Fijian people would have actually understood that this parliament actually wants this country to move along. We need to get people back into their jobs. We need to get the tourists back in. We need the government factories to work. We need the businesses to, do their business. We need the private sector to invest. They did not talk about the fact of giving all these incentives to the private sector, do subdivision of lots, get various tax exemptions. There's a huge, let me tell you, you are burying your heads in sand. There's a huge private sector positive reaction to this budget. Huge. Huge. And in fact, in the next few weeks, we'll be commissioning a number of new projects. That's the reality. Would have been wonderful if the opposition actually took that line. You could have done your political point scoring later. You could have done your point scoring later. You have not even mentioned the stamp duty removal, a bane of our lives for years. Nobody mentioned that. And Honorable Prasad and all these people talk about being honest. Where's the honesty in this? Like I said, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I think, you know, this actually applies to many people. Even the sugarcane guaranteed price. They went on about that. They ran the article without even checking with us. Anybody who knows about the sugarcane industry knows the sugarcane payments are made over 4 payments. The 4th payment is in the wash-up, which falls into the next financial year. Mr. Speaker, sir, I talk about the budget for that financial year. That's the level of transparency we have for this financial year. For the 3 payments, it'll be $70, and obviously the 4th payment will make the wash-up. How simple is that? How simple is that, Mr. Speaker, sir? You see, Mr. Speaker, sir, he rubbed his hands in glee, said, oh, now I can go and get the sugarcane farmer vote. That's what it was. And suddenly, the rug has been pulled from underneath his feet. Mr. Speaker, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. I would stop addressing Honorable Prasad. And Mr. Speaker, sir, I just wanted to say to the Fijian people that this budget, under the leadership of a Prime Minister, is a way forward to get us out of this pandemic situation. Mr. Speaker, sir, nobody knows, except God, what is going to happen with this pandemic next week. Nobody knows whether we're going to get a 4th phase, 5th phase, or whether somebody will come up with a vaccine in 3 weeks' time. Nobody knows. Until such time, we have to put our best foot forward. Until such time, we cannot be sitting around twiddling our thumbs, making all sorts of comments and assertions, and doomsday speak, 666 and all of that, Mr. Speaker, sir, and not be proactive. We have to, Mr. Speaker. So I understand somebody also brought the Golingoli bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, what a lot of nonsense. In this situation, when we're trying to spur up investment, when we're trying to actually drive confidence, bringing in all this disruptive type of policies, Honorable Prasad, of course, obsequious again, won't say anything about it. Because he's got this culture of being obsequious. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir. The reality of the matter is this. Mr. Speaker, sir, the reality of the matter is this. That we have put a best way forward. We are being proactive. We are going to look after those people who need assistance, unemployment benefits. We are going to look after people on social welfare. We are going to look after people who need health services. We are going to look after law and order. We are going to provide impetus for the agriculture sector. And Mr. Speaker, sir, at the same time, we're going to try and boost investment through a private sector by developing relationships with the private sector, providing an open, transparent system, by removing the tariff hurdles, by putting in place various tax incentives, and also at the same time, Mr. Speaker, sir, empower ordinary Fijians further by giving them new forms of assistance, for example, like housing grants. For example, like giving them access to other types of services and amenities, making it easier for them to do business, no more business license. That's what we have done, Mr. Speaker, sir. And the feedback that we have got is that we are on a good track. And we must be focused. We need to be positive. And I urge the Fijian people not to listen to the opposition. Don't believe the analysis by Fiji Times. This is just a smear propaganda campaign. But, Mr. Speaker, sir, focus on the ground realities. That is what we need people to understand. And, Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is that we have now a budget to debate through the Working Committee. If you look at, Mr. Speaker, sir, all the figures that we put in place, these figures have been thought out very well, been thought out very hard. We've been frugal as much as possible, but we've also been strategic in respect of where we carry out our investments. I'd like to once again, Mr. Speaker, sir, thank numerous people who actually helped us, both from the private sector, people in the Ministry of Economy, people at FRCS. Well, one person specifically I want to mention, because the tariff reduction was a huge and massive exercise which is still being carried out. Shalini Kumar from FRCS. The 1,600 line items, they've been reduced. Till last night they were working. The young people, the young civil servants, the economists, etc., they're very excited about this budget. The feedback, they're saying, this is really good. You're on a good path. And they have only chagrin for all of you, those of you who have been critical of it. I want to thank the Honourable Prime Minister for his ability to understand the vision, for his ability to drive that vision, for his ability to think outside the box, Honourable P.O. Tikonduandua. Honourable P.O. Tikonduandua. You can die 1,000 deaths for a leader like him than to follow for 1 minute the kind of treacherous politics that you profess. You can die 1,000 deaths for a leader like him than for the treacherous politics that you profess. Even for 1 minute, I will not ever join you. Mr. Speaker, sir, the fact of the matter is this, that we are now on a path of recovery. And we pray to God that we get this COVID-19 behind us. We'll be able to pre-position ourselves well. Let's be positive. Let's help each other. Get rid of the negativity. Of course there'll be challenges. Of course there could be another third, fourth wave. But if we are positive, if we unite as a nation, and speak as a nation, think as a nation, not be divided along all the lines that you're talking about, then we'll be in a much better position than we are, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, with those comments, I'd like to now conclude my right of reply. Thank you.
Honourable members, I thank the Minister for Economy for his right of reply. Honourable members, pursuant to Standing Orders 99, Clause 3, the 2020-2021 Appropriation Bill 2020, Bill number 13 of 2020, has been read a second time and without any question being put. The bill and the estimates now stand referred to the Committee of Supply. Honourable members, on that note, we will adjourn for morning tea. We adjourn for morning tea. Honourable members, please be seated. Secretary General.
Committee of Supply on a bill for an act to appropriate a sum of $3,211,019,121 for the ordinary services of government for the year ending 31 July 2021, Bill number 13 of 2020.
Honourable members, Parliament will now resolve into Committee of Supply to consider each head in the budget estimates. It is envisaged that at the end of this process, the Committee of Supply will then vote on the schedules and clauses of the 2020-2021 Appropriation Bill 2020. For the information of honourable members, during the committee stage, I will sit at the table with the Secretary General and members will refer to me as Mr. Chair. The mace will also be placed on the lower bracket, signifying that the Parliament is in committee. Honourable members, the Secretary General will announce each head separately. Members may then speak on that head, and you may speak more than once on each head. Honourable members, please take note that in some of the heads there will be several programs and activities listed. I remind honourable members that we will deal with these progressively and that we will not regress to the programs and activities that we have covered or have been covered. Honourable members, as you may be all aware, you may also move amendments to the estimates under the respective heads. If a member moves an amendment, debate will then be on the head and amendment. At the end of the debate, the amendment will be voted on first, followed by the vote on the head. Honourable members, for ease of process during the Committee of Supply, the amendment slips have been placed at your tables. Honourable members, amendments are limited to those permitted under Standing Orders 100, Clause 2, being an increase, decrease, or removal of the item or subhead from the head being debated. There are heads 1 to 50, which we need to get through. Therefore, I will seek your full cooperation. I will now change seat to become Mr. Chair. Secretary General.
Head number 1, Office of the President.
The floor is now open for any comments. Honorable
Mr. Chairman,
Viman
can
Prasad.
I just get your attention before we move to head 1? Can I seek a clarification from the Honourable Minister with respect to the abstract of expenditure by the standard group? Because I think in all the heads we're going to talk about established staff and wages. I thought if we get that clarification now, it might be easier, so we may not raise that in each of the head. If that is okay with you, I want to raise that question.
Could you repeat the question?
What I was saying is, if I could seek clarification from the Honourable Minister about the actual abstract of expenditure, and especially with respect to salaries and wages, because there is every head has a reduction. So the total reduction from the last budget to this one is by about 51 million. That would be across the board. So the question is, that 51 million, in my view, is just the 5% FNPF reduction that is right across the board.
Okay. Not all the heads have been decreased. As you see, as I mentioned,
Yeah.
all the heads actually have increased. Social welfare, agriculture, etc.
Yeah.
But if you look at the way you can do that is by comparison. If you want to look at a comparison, say Seg 1 in Head 1, Program 1, Activity 1, you can see what the 2018-2019 was, what the revised figure was, and then the change.
Yeah.
And then you got the new estimate. Is that, I mean, that's...
Yeah, no, what I was saying is there is a reduction right across the board. So I said, for us, instead of us asking in each head, why there would be a reduction or increase, if we understand right from the beginning why this is a reduction in 51 million, then we will not have any questions in other heads.
Yeah. But it's not as simple as that.
Yeah,
The point is that there are some ministries that would have got an increase in staff,
yeah,
right? So not necessarily all the staff numbers are maintained.
yeah.
So for example, with the police, there's an additional allocation in respect of the staffing numbers.
Yeah.
So obviously then the FNPF goes along with it. The meal allowance, etc., goes along with it.
Yeah.
So similarly, for example, if you look at some of the expenditures in Seg 1, in some of the ministries there were positions that were previously unfilled. So whilst there were vacancies, the funding was provided for. So, I can't tell you offhand, for example, in the 715.8, exactly how many of those positions are new or old. But what I can tell you is that, as you know, the way that the budgets now work is that we give the allocation to the ministry or the particular head, and they make their own adjustments. So, for example, because unlike previously a P2P position, right, you had to go and get approval for this position, this funding. Now there's a lot more flexibility. So, for example, generally when the ministry wants to come along and wants to, for example, increase the expenditure for personnel, they will try and justify that. But it does not necessarily stop them if they've been given like $10 million for example, staff expenditure, from having, instead of having 50 positions, it doesn't stop them from having 65, or doesn't stop them from having 45. Because a lot of the ministries actually do go through a restructure.
So overall, we are not expecting any kind of reduction in the number of civil servants.
No, I mean, overall,
Yeah.
as you said, there's no specific job losses. There are certain positions, for example, sometimes when you have a contract may not be renewed for various reasons. Somebody's not performing, and the ministry may decide not to fill in that position because it's no longer required. Or sometimes there may be, for example, certain positions are actually, subsumed into each other. So the salary may actually increase, and therefore the EFNPF increases. So you can't apply a general rule. I mean, you can't make those kind of assumptions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Right, we'll now move on.
Honorable Chair, sorry, my apologies. May I also seek a clarification from the Honorable Minister for Economy? Like a similar query, like Honorable Prasad, in his budget announcement, he had stated that the issue of overtime, so instead of paying overtime, at paragraph 4 of the Hansard, page 1116. However, notice that pretty much under the different heads that overtime is still budgeted, almost under every head. There's allocations for overtime, even though in his budget address he had stated that they would be removed. So can you please just provide a clarification instead of us going through every single head and addressing the overtime amounts allocated? Thank you.
Yeah. So the way it operates is that it's overtime, so you get days off in lieu of overtime, right? So you still have to pay them that, but it's in lieu of that. So for example, if I'm going to work, say on a Sunday, so I have to, normal circumstances, if I work on Sunday, I get paid double time. And then I will still come back to work on Monday. So I get my double time and I work on Monday. So now what we're saying is that in lieu of you working on both days, you can take that time off, but you still will have to get paid for it. Nobody goes unpaid. You still get paid for it. So that's why you actually have overtime. That's why we have that allocation. Okay?
All right, I think we'll move on. We'll stick to the program as it is, and we can go through those clarifications later on. Program 1, Activity 1. Any comments? Yes.
Clarification, please. On personal emoluments, there is a reduction. Does that mean staff have been laid off? Or previously overstated?
No, there is actually, as you know, that we announced there's a 10% reduction in the heads of the different agencies. So the official secretary's salary is coming down by 10%, and plus there's an alignment of filled positions against the payroll of $62,000. So no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On Seg 4, the estimate was $483,000. That actually shows an actual expenditure of 788.7. Was that an overspending of more than 300 on that?
Sorry, sir, could you please repeat that? What are you referring to?
Seg 4.
Seg 4, yes.
Yes. The 2018-19 estimate was 483.4 thousand.
No, sorry. The 1920 is 404.8, and there's been an increase of 5.5, so it's gone up to 410. Seg 4, overall.
So, the comparison, the changes.
So it's increased.
Why the, yes, why an increase of, yes, it is an increase. Was that an over expenditure?
Yeah, I mean, we've got, for example, we've got fuel and oil. So fuel and oil, there's been an increase of about $3,457 for fuel and oil. In the 2019-2020 revised estimates, $56,543. Now we've added another $3,477. And also there's been an increase of $10,000 for the electricity supply. These include, of course, the State House, the compound fencing lights, the quarters, etc. That's why there's a slight increase. Some of the areas within that seg, and please, I hope the members understand it, within the segs itself, you can have decreases and you can also have increases. So, for example, the upkeep of government house, there's been a reduction of $8,000 within Seg 4 itself. Spare parts and maintenance is decreased by $112,000 or $112,000. Sorry, $112. Incidentals has decreased by $4,400. But the power supply has gone up to $10,000. So overall, the net effect is $5,500. That's all.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a clarification, in addition to the earlier question by the Honourable Leader of Opposition, the actuals on Seg 4 and 5 on Programme 1, Activity 1, as per the details of expenditure, the actuals showed 788,000 and 782,000 in the previous years, against the budget that was set at that time, which is in line with what has been set now, it's around 400,000. So could we have an explanation whether first there was an overspending that was done in 2018-19, and secondly, the effectiveness of the carrying out of the roles in the office of the President with a reduced amount of 400,000, will it be not compromised? Thank you.
I'll take the second question first. No, it won't compromise the operation of the Office of the President. We've had, very deep discussions with them. Everybody understands the need to tighten their belts. 788,000 actuals of 2018-2019 obviously relates to the actual expenditure itself. There would have been, for example, sometimes you have one-off payments for various things that could be in respect of, expenditures within Seg 4. So, for example, things like incidentals could have gone up because, as you know, the government house is also being renovated. So there's various issues that may be linked to that, and that's why. But most certainly the allocation of Seg 4 of 410.3 does not affect the operation of the Office of the President. In fact, if you see overall, there's also been an allocation of, in Seg 5, for example, an allocation of service medals of $50,000 that's been put in place given the, the 50th celebrations and various things going forward. So we normally procure this, the Office of the President procures that. There's been a change of increase of $50,000. So overall, there's been, obviously increased allocation in different areas, but overall it has decreased.
Thank you. Now the Parliament will now vote on Head 1. The question is that the amount of Head 1, Office of the President, be approved. Does any member oppose the motion? Does any member oppose? No. There's no member opposes.
On Programme 1, Activity 1, Seg 4, there's upkeep of government house and upkeep of government house ground of 180,000. Can we just get a clarification on this figure that has been allocated?
So, honorable member, once we voted on a head, we don't regress.
Thank you.
That's the normal
Why are you
procedure.
listening to him?
Yeah.
Don't listen to him.
We move on. No. Yes. We voted on that head, as no one opposes. The head is agreed to unanimously. We go on to Head 2. Office of the Prime Minister. Head 2, Office of the Prime Minister. Secretary General.
Office of the Prime Minister.
The floor is now open for any comments. Program 1, Activity 1.
On set 6. Program 1, Activity 1, set 6. VG Mahogany Trust, 250,000. We're requesting for increase of 250,000. 250,000 as it is, it's okay for administration of the trust itself. I think the landowner. The extra 250,000 that I'm proposing is a revolving increase or revolving fund to enable some of the, what do you call this, landowners to go into value-adding small businesses. That is it. Yeah, I'm moving some more. I'm.
Honorable Prasad.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, just a clarification from the Honorable Prime Minister. Program 1, Activity 1, Sec 3, there's an allocation of 350,000 for overseas travel. Does the Prime Minister expect to travel in this financial year, given the closure of the international borders?
Honorable
Mr. Chair, sir, the Honourable Prasad should know that, as we've said, we don't know what can happen. We've reduced the Prime Minister's expenditure for travelling by a substantial amount. It used to be over $1 million, and now it's gone down to 350. So if, for example, the borders do open and there is a vaccine, he will travel, if there is a need for him. And that's why we put in $350,000. That's why. I mean, you can't say, are you expecting to travel? The allocation is there.
Yeah.
If there's a need for it, then
Yeah,
we
no,
will travel.
because I saw
The allocation is there.
Because I saw a huge reduction. That's why I asked. You know?
Obviously, because of the health risks.
Yeah.
You should know that. Going to basics economics again.
Thank you.
बेचती नहीं करो अपने आप की.
He's going to move it? Yeah. Now, there's been a request for an amendment by Honorable Michele Bulanova. You have the floor.
That program 1, 51, sec 6 to be increased by 250,000.
Why 666?
He's asking for an increase.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to second it. So.
Activity 1, Head 6.
So the explanation behind that proposal is that we are thankful for the 250,000 as it is, for the administration of the trust itself. It's doing well. the extra 250,000 that I'm proposing is to enable this trust to have a revolving fund to help our landowners, 14 stations in Fiji, to go into value-adding small businesses and get more production and so forth. Thank you, sir.
This is the fuel.
Of the
Minister of Finance.
Sorry, sir, sorry.
Yes.
So my apologies. I would like to hear him. Let's not do that kind of stuff. No, you, come on, please.
Explain again. The 250,000 SEs, it's okay. I'm thankful with that. 250,000. Extra 250,000 that we're requesting for proposal, up to 500,000, is to help the trust to help the landowners, 14 stations throughout Fiji, to go into business, small value-adding businesses. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, if I can just, Mr. Chair, sir, if I can just clarify what the fund is actually for.
Yes.
It's an annual grant as per the signed MOU between the Office of the Prime Minister, the Fiji Mahogany Trust, to facilitate the transformation of the Fiji Mahogany Trust, to support business startup of mahogany landowners to transition towards undertaking commercial harvesting ventures. The funding is actually expended on the following: meetings with beneficiaries, site visits, training, pilot project setup, registration of trust and board training. Landowner Board of Trust trustee fees, meal allowance, trustee fees, travel expenses, travel allowance, sitting allowance, logistics of meeting, logistics for accommodation, subcommittee meetings, and other operational matters. That's what that funding is for. So far, Honourable Member, the $250,000 has been sufficient in respect of meeting all those costs. That specifically that MOU is actually signed for. That's what it is for. So therefore, we do not see a need to increase that. We've discussed, of course, with the Office of the Prime Minister, and of course discussed also with the various trustees of the Mahogany Trust. So that suffices for the purpose for which this trust is actually has got funds allocated for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Nawekula.
I wish to speak on the motion, in support of the motion. This $250,000 is normal. It's been coming year after year. And the motion is asking for a further amount to assist the indigenous landowners. We heard, and the Honourable Minister for Forestry has confirmed that the landowners will be involved in the harvesting. This is a very, very expensive and difficult thing to do. Unlike Fiji pine, where harvesting is easy, mahogany has been planted on very, very difficult terrain. And you can't expect the owners of the native landowners to do that quite easily. What will happen if government does not assist them is that third parties, they will use their license, the third parties will come in and exploit them. So it is important for government to assist them in the harvesting. It's very, very difficult. And Chairman, take it from me. This is from the former chairman of Fiji Hardwood. It's very, very difficult because of the terrain compared to Fiji Trust to harvest the mahogany. So they're entitled to some help from the government, and I support the motion for that.
Chair. Honourable Prime Minister.
Chair, this 250,000 has been underutilized over the many years. They must learn to utilize the current 250,000 before they're asking for any more. They are far behind audits and submission of reports, and we have put them on notice. In fact, my permanent secretary has put them on notice. He has called them for meetings a number of times to explain it to them, but they have not been turning up.
Right, we will move on to Program 1, Activity 2. We go through this and then we'll go on the voting demand. Yes, Honorable Viman Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I please request clarification on SEC 5? There is a 20K allocation for media expenses. It has been reduced from 40K. Last year, if you recall, Mr. Chairman, we queried the 10K allocation under the previous SEC for advertising, and we were told that the allocation is to cater for advertising positions, etc. Can the Minister please update on this expense, whether
SEC
5, that 20K allocation for media expenses has been reduced from 40K. So and last year we queried the 10K allocation under the previous SEG. Now the question is COVIS or Minister of Information not doing that or not paid to do that? Is this for some separate media company allocation?
Honorable Prasad, I thought you would know this by now. If you look at most of the ministries, they actually have media expenses. It's not about COVIS only. Stop being obsessed with COVIS. It's to do with, for example, when you have media outreach, when, for example, if the Prime Minister is going somewhere and we have to take the people from the Ministry of or Department of Information to cover the expenses, those are the types of expenses that comes from that. No, so for example, previously when we had the Honourable Prime Minister would go for, say, overseas visits, and they were very important visits, we had media expenses that were linked to that. So they're separately accounted for. It gives a better accountability from that. So for this media, if you look at COVIS, I know you're interested, look at communications. They've got a separate thing. That's an overall media work, PR work that they do for governments. This is specifically to the Honourable Prime Minister's office. So media expenses for different ministries. Yeah.
Thank you. We'll move on to. Is that to do with it? Yes?
Program 1, Activity 2.
Hey, we've gone to Program 2.
Huh?
We've gone to.
Oh, sorry.
We moved. Honorable Lever, yours the same?
Yes, Mr. Chair. It's on Activity 2, Sec 10.
Which program?
Program 1.
Program 1. No,
Activity 2.
You're going back. We're on program.
We were just looking at Activity 1.
Yeah. Program
Now it's
2.
Activity 2.
Program 2, Activity 1.
Okay. Then I reserve my comments when we go to.
Thank you. Program 3, Activity 1.
So we're still on
Program 3, Activity 1.
Program 1, Activity 1, Sec 6.
Now, we will now vote on the amendment, right? Program 1, Activity 1, Seg 6. That's with respect to the increase of 200, the amendment by Honorable Bulnotha. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. We'll now We will now vote on head number 2. The question is that the amount of head number 2, Office of the Prime Minister, be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes have it. Office of the Attorney General. Secretary General.
Head number 3, Office of the Attorney General.
The floor is now open for any comments. Program 1, Activity 1.
Mr. Chair, I seek clarification in relation to SEG 5, an amount of $12,000 for film censorship expenses. What is that for? So that I can decide whether to increase or remove it.
SEG 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the film censorship, as the Honourable Nowaikula would know, that it basically censors films. And these are for the payment of the allowances. We have 7 members in the Film Censor Board, and they basically get allowances paid for themselves. And obviously the number of films, this year the production is decreased. You will see not many new films coming on board. But these people essentially, they get paid for viewing movies and we pay them an allowance and they give the rating. And there's also then an appeals board to it too, which if they meet, which they rarely do, and then that's the expenses.
Thank you. Honorable Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification from the Honorable Attorney General. Under SEC 5, last year there was 150K allocation for Fiji Intellectual Property Office. And I remember you saying that FIPO's job was to bring some kind of legislation. If you can highlight, what's the progress and if the reduction is there for, because the work has been done already.
Yeah, I think essentially the reason why we reduced it because of past expenditure. There's not been much of an uptake on FIPO. But we have, in respect of the bills, we have presented a couple of bills to the Parliament, which is actually before the committee. As you would know, regarding trademarks, the patents, also the Madrid system, that's before the Foreign Affairs Committee, the signing of the 3 committees regarding WIPO matters, which is there. So once that those treaties are then sort of ratified by us, then it will actually spur on a bit of growth in terms of the work from there.
I give the floor to the Honorable Nawaikula. Move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My motion is that the sum of $12,000 in SEG 5, Head 3, Program 1, Activity 1, be removed totally. That's the allocation for the film censorship expenses. I'm asking for that to be taken out.
I second the motion, Honorable Chair.
What's the reason?
You've all heard that motion. Those in favor say aye.
I want to talk to the motion.
Right. You have the floor.
Yes. If you can see, I'm asking that this amount should be taken out totally. Because I feel that the film censorship board or whatever is totally useless. Why is it useless? I think this is an archaic from the last time. We see our children watching pornography in schools. Secondary school boys watching pornography, sometimes inviting girls, schoolgirls to watch it. So I'm asking, what is the use of the film censorship? And yet, they are concentrating themselves on film, people who go to the movies. It should have changed now. If it is film and internet censorship, then it will be useful. So this is something that is useless. It is not doing anything because it's not stopping children from watching violence and pornography in their phone. So useless, please go out, unless you change.
Thank you. Honorable General. Honorable Prime Minister.
Chair, there's a whole lot of difference between this film censorship and what is trying to achieve here. Hold on. Listen.
Order.
That censorship that he's talking about is his responsibility. We're talking about movies in theaters, not the one on this. This is his. Parents. Well, that's got nothing to do with this.
Mr. Speaker, sir, just to clarify, the honourable member, again, the fact of the matter is, it's a very dichotomous approach. Because what he's saying, therefore, because there are people or young children who may be accessing pornography on their phones because their parents can't control them or don't have any control on them, don't block it. You know, everything's got to do with government. I mean, I remember when in high school, there's certain kids who used to bring, penthouse to school, and that depended on the parents. So, you can't say that, therefore, nobody then argued and said because the kids are bringing penthouse or Playboy to school, therefore we should not have film censorship. That's really, with respect, imbecilic logic. So essentially, there are many children who, for example, don't have a smartphone, and they would go to the cinemas to watch a movie, and we don't want them to watch movies that they should not be watching. That's why we have a film censor board. Not every child has a phone. Maybe children, all are lucky to have phones. Not all children have phones, or smartphone for that matter. So we still have to regulate the cinemas, and cinemas are more readily available. So it does not make logical sense for you to say that.
Program 2, Activity 1. Honorable Andre Charlie.
So I would like to move a motion.
Yes, you have the floor.
Thank you. I would like to propose an increase to head number 3 to be increased by $330,000 in Program 2, Activity 1, Sec 6. This is in respect to domestic air services subsidy. I would like the amount of $380,000 was reduced from the allocation from the budget estimate for 2019 to 2020. My motion is just to restore that amount because there is really a need in the domestic air services in Fiji.
I second that, Honorable Chair.
The floor is open for comments on that motion.
Yeah, I think when I spoke in Parliament on my response to the budget estimate for 2020 to 21, I raised the issue about some domestic, some airports in some maritime provinces have not been serviced for quite a while. The airports are there, the people are not being served by air services. The government has proposed a reduction to that allocation. From that, that was allocated in the 2019 to 2020 estimate. Now, my recommendation is that the amount that is recommended to be reduced be restored, because there is a need for air services to service those airports that have not been serviced for years.
Any further comments? Honorable Biman Prasad?
Mr. Chairman, this is not on the motion. Are we still on the motion?
Yes, we're still on the motion.
Okay, after the motion, I have a clarification.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, sir, in fact, the allocation has been increased by about $541, more, slightly more. It was 1529459 in the 1920 revised estimate. Now it's 1530. You'll see that. It's an increase of about $541 because of utilization. So currently, this subsidy, as you know, that we call for tenders. So there are only two domestic operators in Fiji, which is Fiji Link and Northern Air, and then they essentially bid for the routes. Now, you can't go and force people to fly to different routes. So the routes we currently subsidize are Nosori, Wanwambalavu Nosori, Nosori Lakemba Nosori, Nosori Koro Nosori, Nosori Kandavu Nosori, Nosori Ngau Nosori, Nosori Didia Nosori, Nandi Rotuma Nandi. So these are the routes that are currently subsidized. So we then, of course, we call for tenders every year. So based on these and whoever's won the tender, so some of them, Northern Airways has won, and more attractive in terms of pricing for us, and then Fiji Link. And they've got to have the right aircraft, etc. So then we pay that out accordingly. So the money is fully utilized. In respect of any new routes, then again, you know, there has to be a demand for it. The airlines actually have to be willing to fly to those destinations also. So that's what it is for. And one of the reasons why, of course, that we do provide the subsidy, because, I mean, Rotuma now very soon will become financially viable, and we're hoping that Rotuma will actually come off, you know, the subsidy scheme, because we now have an ATR 72 that flies. But with the smaller routes, where there's very few people, the reality of the matter is most of these planes actually cannot go to full capacity because they have to carry the fuel. And there's no fuel back, you know, where they actually land. So when you have a heavy load with the fuel, you carry less people because of the weight. So as a result of that, you cannot have a maximum return on the seats that you actually fly. So we subsidize it. So it makes them slightly bit more viable for them to actually fly. So the airfare that you actually pay is, in fact, if they were to fly a commercial flight, you'd probably be paying 3-4 times more, depending on what the route is. So we come in and then we say, okay, so they'll say to us, if you pay us this much per seat, we will then fly to this destination. And that's what we're doing. In the same way, you know, you have the inter-island shipping. There's a government, you know, input into that area. But it has not decreased.
Thank you. Honorable Bulitavu, you have a... Honorable Bulitavu, you have a...
No, Honorable Chair, with that explanation, probably the mover of the motion would like to be given a chance to whether that's sufficient or wants to withdraw.
I think the explanation is clear, and I think I'll withdraw the motion then.
Thank you. Honorable Biman Prasad.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a clarification generally on this head from the Attorney General. The Freedom of Information Act was passed in 2018, and of course there's provision for the Accountability and Transparency Commission, you know, as per the Constitution. I don't see any allocation either under your office or under the Ministry of Justice. Can you explain what's happening there? When is the Act coming into force?
Honorable Prasad, as you would know, linked to that was the other laws in respect of declaration of personal interests, etc., which actually lapsed because the committee did not.
You mean the Code of Conduct Bill?
Yeah. because that was also linked to that. If you look at the Transparency Commission, you'll see that's in the independent commissions. It does not sit with the Attorney General's office. It's on page 60. It's been a modest sum of $20,000 only, but you may recall 2 budgets ago we had separated it. So it's an independent body. So once you have the code of conduct, etc., all up and running, then we'll be able to have this commission actually up and running.
So what you are saying is without the conduct
Absolutely.
bill,
Yes. So Parliament needs to do its work.
Honorable Bulutau.
well, I hope the committee which is looking at the code of conduct bill, takes note of the fact that the Freedom of Information Act was approved in 2018. It's almost like 2 years now. We haven't done anything after that.
The Freedom of Information also, you need an independent body.
Yeah.
You can't actually have a government body doing it. So, because FOI is in relation to government activities. So the Transparency Commission obviously linked into the Code of Conduct. Those bills probably need to be revived, but given the workload of the committees, we're quite happy to revive those bills, retable them in Parliament, because as you know, after the sitting of each term of Parliament, all the bills actually lapse.
Yeah.
So we can bring it in if everybody's appetite and all the committees actually catch up with what they're doing.
I think, Mr. Chairman, we should bring the code of conduct bill as soon as possible. Thank you.
I'll take it in this order. Honorable Bulutau, you got the floor this time. Don't give it away to anyone.
Just a point of clarification, Honorable Chair, on the 6, on grant for Civil Aviation Authority, if you could clarify too that whether the Lambasa Airport upgrade is included in that grant, Honorable Chair.
Just for clarification, this is for CAF. It's not for AFL. Essentially, the CAF is the Civil Aviation Authority Fiji, which is a regulatory body. So they certify the planes, they certify the engineers, they certify the airport, etc. The way that CAF gets its money, as you would recall, in the previous allocations, we have been giving them very little money, because they had quite a bit of money sitting in trust accounts, and it was underutilized. We said you need to use that. But the other way that CAF actually makes money is that every time a tourist you pay departure tax, a certain percentage of it goes to CAF. A certain percentage goes to AFL. So obviously, because nobody's been flying, CAF has got no revenue. This is why we made the allocation of $2.5 million to help pay for the wages, to help pay for the running of CAF. It's very important. So even with all these planes that are flying, the domestic planes, all of that, that's what it's for. It got nothing to do with the upgrade of the airport. That comes under AFL. Now, we normally give grants to AFL if we feel that there's a need for AFL to, invest in that area and they need some additional funding. So you can see in this year, in this budget, we have not given them any additional grants. So AFL will do, address these issues from its normal expenditure items. Obviously, AFL is also under a lot of strain, given the fact that AFL has forgiven the rent for all its tenants for the past 3-4 months. And so there'll be some budgetary strain, but we hope to, pick up the capital works in the future.
Honorable Chair, for the information of the Honorable Minister, given currently the Lambasa Airport has been closed for renovation and upgrade, so the only airport available now is at Sabah. So the service providers there are not providing transport. And there's twin otters coming to Sabah, 17 seaters. And probably if that arrangement can be done by service providers to provide shuttle transport by Fiji Link from Lambasa to Sabah and Sabah to Lambasa. Just that is a request from those passengers coming from Lambasa to right to Sabah.
Sure. I mean, I think the capital works in AFL in Lambasa Airport will continue. And as you know that we had said about night landing too, there were some issues with ATR. They did not want certain, or they did not like the certain approaches. So Fiji Link decided to fly smaller aircraft for night landing. So they are some of the work in progress. But certainly the issue about what you raised about providing shuttle services, we can talk to the Northern Air and Fiji Link and see what they're doing regarding that.
Thank you. Honorable Ngapoka, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On SEG 6, there's $95,000 there for membership in ICAO, which is an important body we should belong to. But generally, in terms of your budgeting, given the situation we face, what is the government doing in terms of our levy for all the organizations we belong to globally? And I'm not asking specifically about ICAO, but the whole budget. I mean, you know where I'm coming from. We are members of many bodies. Are we negotiating our fees? Renegotiating our fees, rather?
Most of these organizations, they don't back up on their fees. So ICAO, our annual fees is $95,000, our subscription to ICAO, it's a set fee. But nobody has said that. I mean, we've, for example, in respect of bilateral loans, the World Bank has said that they'll give a holiday to people to do the repayments until December.
Yeah.
That's in respect of bilateral loans. It's actually driven by World Bank. But regarding, for example, even the UN and various other agencies, IMO, we still are paying our subscription fees.
We've made the approaches to them?
Sorry?
Have we approached them for some relief?
All our embassies talk to all of them, but the fact of the matter is that nobody's decided to reduce any of the fees.
Oh.
We can't be the only one, because then, you know, we'll be the only one left out. So
You're getting moratorium on the loans and all that. So, you know, one would believe that we can, with the reduction in activities, we should be asking for lower fees.
Many of the international organizations, because of the unilateralism taking place by USA in particular, you know, they're withdrawing from WHO, for example. They made an announcement of that. So there's a huge threat to multilateralism as we speak. So many of these agencies actually are scrambling for funds. The UN, as you know, we've discussed in Parliament, they want us to pay the rent. So there's no way that the UN is going to say, don't pay the subscription fee. So we are currently now, you know, in negotiations. We've got the requirements for them, and we're going out to tender very soon to put up a UN house, where we will actually bear the cost for the rental. That's unfortunately the reality of multilateral agencies at the moment.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a general question for the Attorney General. It covers some of the items under 3315. Yeah. And it's on Fiji Intellectual Property Office, the drafting of laws, legal experts' expenses, the Fiji Law Reform Commission under 7. Do we have the capacity?
No.
Sorry.
We're going back.
No, you're going
is
back.
that going
No,
back? Sorry.
no. We're on
Program.
program 2 now.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Rondro and then Honorable Bimal Prasad.
Thank you, Chair. Can you just get a clarification on the Program 2, Activity 1, Seg 7, aircraft accident investigation? This amount has been reduced, I think, from the previous year of the 240,000. Is this relating to some ongoing aircraft investigation, or what is this allocation for?
It's been reduced by $2,229, $2,299 actually. So it's not that significant. We round it off to 240. We always make an allocation just in case there's an accident. We have to have this money ready. You know, so, you know, God forbid if tomorrow there's an aircraft that crashes, we have to fly in experts. Generally, we don't have experts in Fiji, so it's to pay for that. So it's, you know, it's always there.
Honorable Bimal Prasad.
You reduced the CAF budget from 1.5 million to 700,000 last year. Now you're increasing it to 2.5. What is the reason? Because I know in 2018, you know, they actually made a loss.
You just explained it. We don't know this.
Honorable Prasad,
I didn't hear that.
Honorable Prasad, I just explained it. Essentially, what we said that CAF for a number of years had been getting grants, even though they had quite a lot of healthy build-up in the trust account, which they had piled over a number of years. So we asked CAF to use those fundings, or that money that they had in their trust accounts, or they, sorry, I should say the term deposits, and use that. And then, of course, CAF also gets revenue from when you pay departure fees. So because there's been no departure fees being paid, and nor do we envisage any getting in departure fees in the immediate future, CAF still has to pay for its operations, all the staff, etc. So that's why we've made an allocation of $2.5 million.
Yeah, it's just that they made a loss, and last year you reduced it from 1.5 to 700, and now, so that it sort of didn't aid, you know, that's why I asked why you're increasing it to 2.
Honorable Prasad, again, I want to highlight to you that you're looking at a balance sheet loss. It does not mean that there is a loss per se in the ability to pay for the operations. That's my point. This is the problem, and too little information, and you start to say, oh, they made a loss.
No, but you increase it. That, I mean, it's a very legitimate question, so don't trivialize it.
It is a trivial question.
Yeah,
the point is that $2.5 million is necessary for the operational costs.
Okay. Honorable Tuisawambu, you have the floor.
Chairman, thank you. Just a clarification on the SINSEC, PASO. On PASO, Honorable Minister, can you just update the status of that? I understand they were winding down given the duplication in functions with other officers regarding aircraft safety. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we have a, that's basically our subscription fees. We don't actually, frankly, have much confidence in PASO. They've had a number of issues, but because it's a regional island state, we are a member of PASO. In fact, many of the functions of PASO can actually be performed by CAF and AFL, and we've offered, in fact, we've had discussion with the World Bank to have a regional IKO, sub-regional IKO office in Fiji, because Fiji actually has the capacity to provide many of the services of PASO, but that's the sub-fees.
Right, we'll now move on to Honorable Nawaikula to move your. You've already spoken on this, so we're going to vote on this. Right? We vote on that the $12,000 be left out of Head 3 in respect of Program 1. Activity 1, Seg 5. Those in favor? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays have it. Now we vote on the head. Head 3. Now we vote on Head 3. And the question is that the amount of Head number 3, Office of the Attorney General, be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The ayes just have it. Secretary General.
Head number 4, Minister of Economy.
The floor is now open for any comments. Program 1, Activity 1.
Yeah, just a clarification.
Honorable Rondo.
Program 1, Activity 1, the grants for FRCS operating grant of $40 million. Can you just clarification in terms of the work that they do, the work that they've been expected to do? And I think there's been a reduction from the previous year's budget allocation. Can you just get a clarification on these operating grants?
Thank you. Honourable Member, if I, Mr. Chair, through you, sir, you want to know what FRCS does? Sorry?
Work that they do and the reduction in this budget allocation.
I think we all know what they do. They essentially collect taxes, they monitor compliance, and of course, you know, they also control the border, the customs. Overall, I mean, I can go into specifics of it, of course. In respect of the decrease in the grant, we've already spoken to FRCS. There's a reduction of about approximately $5.2 million from the revised estimate. FERCUS also has a current savings of about $30 million in a term deposit, which matures in the financial year, in this coming financial year. So if there is any shortfall, they can use some of that for the operational expenses. We don't expect it to be used quite significantly, because if you look at the reduction in the expenditure, it's from $45 million to $40 million. There's of course a number of operational matters that FRCS won't actually have to deal with anymore, and they had an entire unit to deal with stamp duty collection. There's now no more stamp duties to be collected. So a lot of the staff, we understand, you know, will be retrained, or there are other areas if they do need them, or if their contracts come to an end, they will not necessarily continue with FRCS. And with the efficiencies that are being built in, we expect the operational cost of FRCS to also come down significantly. The VAT monitoring, as you know, the VAT implementation has been deferred for another year, so that also gives them the ability to recoup. Our position has always been with FRCS. We still believe there's a lot of room for improvement in efficiency and the manner in which they deal with the tax agents, who we've been saying they are your customers. You need to see them as customers. And we hope that with the new board, and we have a lot of confidence in the new board, that will bring about a cultural change.
Thank you. Honourable Biman Prasad.
Just in relation to that, Chair, can the Minister explain the new IT system that FRCS was supposed to have implemented? Is it working? I understand there's been some cost overrun, and whether it's full-on working now or it's still under construction. And the other question is, what happened? You talked about efficiency and all that. What happened to the 20-member committee, which you appointed to as the report out, or where it is at the moment?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll take the first question first. Regarding the IT system, we were also concerned about the IT system, and in respect of the messaging being sort of generated from the IT system. So we've asked the new chair, Fei Yi, to actually have a focus on that. There has been over the years a number of issues to different systems that have been procured by FRCS. So I think there's a need to consolidate that, but there's a new IT system, as you highlighted, and the new board will be looking at that system. Regarding the issue about, so the second question was, the 20 years. Yes, that was chaired by Dilip Khatri, and I think when COVID-19 happened, everybody kind of went into their little dungeons. But I have had a message from Dilip Khatri saying that the budget is fantastic. He could not believe it, to quote him. So I expect that they would be making some recommendation, but I've asked them to work with the new board. The chair, I'm sure, would be talking to the committee. But we also would like them to, and we did not want to pressure people in the COVID-19. People's businesses were all closing down, and they're all essentially small, big, large, and medium businesses. We don't want to put pressure on them, so I'm sure that they will give us some report in respect of the efficiencies. But I think given the massive changes in the tariff structures and also, you know, removal of various taxes and stamp duties, that we will come up with some further positive news on that.
Thank you. Activity 2.
Mr. Chair, just a clarification. On Sec 7, Mr. Chair, just a clarification on that item. On National Asset Management Framework, there's quite a huge reduction in that in that sake. Can we have some clarifications from the Honourable Minister?
Sec 7, Activity 2.
Thank you.
Sec 7, Activity
Sorry,
2.
one second, sir.
No problem.
Program 1, Activity 2. Program 1, Activity 2.
Sec 7,
Oh, FMIS.
National Asset Management Framework.
Program 1, Activity 2. Yeah.
National Asset Management Framework.
Yeah, it's not a huge reduction. It's it's gone down to $10,000 from $30,000. So, as you know that we are developing this because we want to move to sort of accrual accounting. And government, as you know, for all these decades have been into cash accounting. So the idea is to consolidate all the government assets, take and evaluate, etc. So that's why we've got that at the moment because of the changes that have taken place, the reprioritization. Some work will continue, but not as much as it did previously.
Thank you. Honorable Rondrondo, you have the floor.
Chair, just a clarification to the Honourable Minister. The grants for Fiji Servicemen's Aftercare Fund that used to be under this Program 1 Activity 2, is it now been looked after by another department?
Yeah, no, in the last budget, you may recall, we moved it to Ministry of Defence.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Activity 3. Activity 4. Dr. Biman Prasad, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Activity 4, internal audit and good governance. This is a question to the Honourable Minister. One of the problems we've had with government departments, statutory bodies, government commercial companies, is the inability of some of those ministries and departments to actually produce annual reports on time. And, it should be, so my question is whether this allocation for audit and good governance, actually tracks down, these habitual latecomers, in terms of producing annual reports. Whether there will be any.
Which, sorry, which?
No, I'm just asking you general on inner audit and governance.
Okay. I think if you look at, Mr. Chair, sir, you'll find that internal audit and good governance, and what the honourable member is actually talking about in respect of the public enterprises, that falls under Program 3, Activity 1. So the Public Enterprises Department within the Ministry of Economy, that's their job essentially to make sure that these state-owned enterprises actually deliver their annual reports on time. The issue about internal audit and good governance is actually about audit within government overall and good governance, not to do with the limited liability companies and government statutory bodies. Yeah. That comes under the Department of Public Enterprise. Yeah. So their function is about internal audit across all the ministries. Yeah. And as announced in the budget 2 budgets ago, we now have with these audit reports that come out with the PS for economy finds that there is any, breaches of that, she can directly report it to FICAC. Yeah. All that takes place. But regarding specifically a question, that comes under public enterprise. So within the public enterprise department, if you look at Program 3, Activity 1, Head 4, Public Enterprise General Administration, the staff there generally have an oversight. They have respective desk officers, so they will look after XYZ companies, and their job is to make sure that they know the annual reports, etc., come out on time. I think the problem has been that for a number of years, which we'll all agree on, for many of the SOEs, there was a lag in respect of the annual reports being prepared. But as you would also know from your former work at the Public Accounts Committee, that they have actually now done. Are you back in there again? I'm surprised.
No, I'm not there.
So
you took me out.
I didn't put you out. You let yourself out. The fact of the matter is that you couldn't handle not being chair. The fact of the matter is that they They are now doing work. They've caught up with many of those organizations. They've caught up with the annual reports.
Yeah. So your ministry's internal audit governance looks after the annual reports of, because I'm also concerned about annual reports from ministries as well, apart from the public enterprises and entities.
No, what I'm saying is that internal audit and good governance, as the name suggests, is about internal audit, which is government internal.
Yeah.
Public enterprise is not internal. It's actually external. These are limited liability companies or statutory organizations that they have their own set of rules. They have their own boards.
Yeah.
They have their own, governance structures. And public enterprise staff's job is to make sure that they actually, have the good governance structures in place. But they're not internal audit. Please, we have to make that have to have the understanding. They are limited liability companies, and the Companies Act.
Yeah, no, I know that. What I was saying.
But you're confusing it.
No, I'm not confusing. I'm very clear. I'm just saying that even ministries within government don't produce annual reports on time, and I'm saying whether...
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My apologies. Okay.
All right, we move on. Activity 5. No. Activity 6.
No.
Activity 7. No. Activity 8.
Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Program 1, Activity 7.
You have the floor.
Query on regarding for the Minister, the construction implementation unit. I was wondering, could you explain the role of this unit, given that we already have under Ministry of Infrastructure and Met Services, architectural and engineering services, and you have this. Shouldn't this be appropriately be under Ministry of Infrastructure? And I understand you don't have any engineers, architects in this section, given that they are looking after construction implementation, and those services have to be tendered out, and you are using some private providers for that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sir, through your honourable member, I think you're kind of a bit late in the game. This has been there for a number of years. And as you would know that previously we had the Public Works Department used to have its architects, and a lot of the architects, a lot of them weren't necessarily qualified. The ability for the engineers to give certification weren't always there necessarily. And of course, when you have only 1 or 2 people within the entire government to provide the services, the speed at which they could do that was very, very limited. Case in point, Cyclone Winston. When you had over 200 schools that were damaged, and you had to rebuild those schools really quickly, and some of them actually very, very difficult to do so, you had to engage with the private sector. The CIA's role is essentially to manage all of that, manage the quality of it, the outsourcing of it. And of course, one of the things that we did find is we found many issues, many of the legacy issues that we do have. Previously, when hospitals were built, for example, they weren't necessarily built to international standard hospital levels. The integrity was not there. So somebody at PWD may come and decide to put a sink with a wooden bench, and then of course, because the bench would get wet, it would rot, and the sink would fall down, and it would smell, etc. So now you have CIU, where we outsource a lot of the work. We gain efficiencies in that. We actually have public liability insurance, professional indemnity insurance that is provided by all of these service providers. So we're able to expedite the building of these facilities that we do need to do so. I mean, I hope many of you will turn up if you're really interested. When the Honourable Prime Minister this year will go and open the hospital in Navosa, and I've already seen pictures of it. If he were to give it to those people with due respect for the people you want them to do, they would never have been able to achieve that kind of standard and the ability to have that new modern day way of construction. So what we're doing, like most modern day governments, we're actually now outsourcing many of this. The skill sets that's now, the input that's there is actually quite significant, and indeed benefits us all. Plus, we also get a good return for our dollar. That's really, really important for us. So that's what CIA's role is there too. They also manage the government assets in terms of the maintenance of it. And we are now trying to provide a number of ways in which we can further improve the quality of the assets that we have, whether it's government quarters, etc., and the rebuilding of that. We're also trying to get a number of areas where we do you put these assets in clusters so we get better return for our money when you put them in clusters as opposed to individual constructions that takes place.
Thank you. Activity 8? No. Activity 9? No. Program 2, Activity 1? No. Program 3, Activity 1? No. Program 3, Activity 1?
Yeah.
Honorable Bulletov, we have the floor.
Honorable Chair, sir, just a question to the Honorable Minister for Economy. Given this particular program was in Ministry of Public Enterprise in the last year's budget, but now under Ministry of Economy. Just an explanation on to...
This was put in the previous year's budget, not the immediate one. Public enterprise got subsumed in the economy now 2 budgets ago. It's not a new thing.
Honorable Prasad.
Chairman, are we on activity 9?
Program 3.
Head 4, head 4.
We're on program 3, activity 1.
37.
Honorable Chair. 37.
You went too fast, Mr. Chairman.
No, look, I only respond to you. When I make an announcement, you said, yeah. You have the floor. You have the floor.
Straight.
But it was just...
Program 3, activity 1.
It's a new ministry, Chair.
A new ministry, yes.
Yes, Honorable Chair.
Just explain it.
Regarding public enterprise, it's a department under the Ministry of Economy. It's no longer a separate ministry. This is like 2 budgets ago. Again, we've done it for efficiency's sake. So we don't have separate set of accountants and HR people. They do essentially the same role, and this is one department that actually monitors public enterprises. We are saving money by doing this.
Right. Okay. Yes, Honorable Bulletov.
Still on program 3, activity 1, sec 10 on Fiji Rice Limited, 800,000 grant. Need clarification on the grant, Fiji Rice, and whether this is a reduction or increase, given the potential that we have, given the COVID-19, and people would be wanting to use land and plant rice.
Yeah, so there's actually been no change. It's still maintenance of the same level. This is obviously given directly as a grant to Fiji Rice Limited. Does not mean that the Minister of Agriculture does not also have an input through his ministry regarding rice planting. So they work in conjunction with each other.
Thank you. Honorable Linda Tambuya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just under activity 1, seg 5, there's an amount of advertising, and it seems to be reoccurring under the Ministry of Economy's heads. Can you just explain what this is for? Because it could really be absorbed under communications, head 16. So this is, unnecessary fat, so to speak. Advertising expenses under seg 5. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sir, the ministries actually do have to advertise. So, for example, if they advertise a position, if there's a position in the ministry or that particular department, you have to pay for the advertisement. If you want to put out a public notice, then you pay for advertisement, and that $3,000 is for that.
All right, we move on. Honorable members, we now vote on Head 4. The question is that the amount of Head number 4, Ministry of Economy, be approved. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say nay. Nay. The nays, the ayes have it. The nays, nay. What's the time? And the we'll take Ministry of it, okay, after lunch. We break for lunch. Honorable members, I thank you for your cooperation during this morning's sitting. What we will do now will suspend proceedings and take a break for lunch. Thank you. Goes on the 2 that